What's going on? This Theo Gremminger, aka the OG Fantasy, back at it. And I'm not talking sleepers. I'm not talking waiver wire. I'm not talking defensive content. Today, I'm talking kickers. And that's right. It's week 16. This is the final four for most of you in your fantasy playoffs. Some of you have 2 week sprints. A lot of you have single elimination. And week 16 is wild because in a lot of leagues, number one gets paid almost all of the money. Number two might get paid a substantial amount of money as well. Some leagues pay three, most leagues don't. So this is like the biggest weekend of the entire year. For most of you, there's 4 teams left in your league, and we're looking for any edge that we can get to get you through it, win in advance. And that's pretty much the name of the game when we get to this time of the year, late December fantasy football. So we're definitely looking at the kicker position. And the kicker position can be extremely frustrating. There's certain people want it, not have it in their leagues. They don't even want to worry about it. And it's the one position where you could have a team scoring a ton of points and it ends up being all touchdowns, and then you still don't get the fantasy scoring. Then you have other weeks where your kicker gets field goal opportunities but misses them. It's very frustrating, but it makes a huge difference. You think about how close some of these fantasy playoff matchups can be, and if you've been playing fantasy a long time, you've gone through it where you've lost a very close game or won a very close game, and at the end of the day, points matter. And the difference between having a 13-point game from your kicker and a 6-point game from your kicker is the same difference as a running back scoring 20 versus scoring 13. So it's looking for those differences and those edges that we can find any way you cut it to get us through this week. So there's a few no-brainer starts every single week at kicker, and that's the case this week as well. Players like Brandon Aubrey, Justin Tucker, both top 6 in scoring and on efficient offenses. Other players like Jake Moody, Tyler Bass, Harrison Butker, almost always in your lineup. But most of the time, certain kickers are going to be in advantageous matchups and certain kickers are going to be in disadvantageous matchups. We want to be able to attack the kickers in good matchups and avoid the kickers in bad matchups. There's also specific teams that allow more field goals on a weekly basis for whatever reason. Some of these defenses are generally generous to offenses in in every way. Like Washington. Washington is allowed top 6 field goal attempts on the season. They've also been getting shredded by opposing quarterbacks. They're generous to everybody. But there's some defenses that can have like a bend but don't break nature that lends itself to teams settling for field goals against them. Teams like the Atlanta Falcons, teams like the Tennessee Titans have both allowed a lot of field goals this year. So we also can chase games with high totals. Let Vegas help us out and pick, the games that we can attack that maybe have a little bit more scoring potential. These can sort of insulate our opportunities and provide us with a floor. And lastly, this time of year, we've got to keep an eye on Mother Nature as weather can destroy our kicker scoring. So I want to give you a couple kicker options. Maybe you don't love your kicker this week. I'm going to give you a couple kicker options. All of these players are available in 75% or more of Yahoo leagues. And, I like a number of these players. I think that there's a couple of these guys that I'm going to be using in my lineups. And again, these are players that are all available in a ton of leagues. So if you get off this video and you go to look at free agents in your league, a lot of them are going to be sitting right there. And I'll start out with Thursday night's game. Lucas Havrisik of the LA Rams. And Havrisik, some of you are going to say he missed some longer 40-plus yard field goals, and he has. But it's not affected his bottom line in scoring. In real life football, there's a chance that if he keeps missing a couple of these long field goals, the Rams might look at somebody else. But for fantasy football, he's been doing very well. He scored at least 8 fantasy points in 3 straight games, and that includes a kicker number 3 overall finish in week 14 and a kicker number 6 overall finish in week 13. The Rams are 4-point favorites at home with a fantasy-friendly 46-point total. So Havrisik of the LA Rams, and then another kicker for you to consider adding, he's available in 95% of leagues, is another player on a team that's favored and at home this week, and that's Cairo Santos of the Chicago Bears. Santos and the Bears are 4-point favorites this week against Arizona. And Cairo Santos was on an absolute heater with 3 straight games of double-digit fantasy points before his 6-point performance in Week 15's loss to Cleveland. So 3 straight games where he hit 10 or more points scored, and then dropped down in Week 15's loss to Cleveland, which was just an ugly one, 2017 game, one to kind of avoid. But Santos will look to get back on track this week against Arizona. Arizona is just in terrible shape on defense right now. They allowed 45 points to San Francisco last week. Look for Santos to get double-digit scoring this week. The other kicker that we can use, and this is a really fun one and one that we could potentially use for 2 weeks, is Kaimi Fairbairn of the Houston Texans. And Fairbairn finished as kicker number 1 overall last week with 2 50-plus yard field goals to go along with 2 shorter field goals. Houston is at home and will most likely be missing C.J. Stroud for the 2nd consecutive week. They also face off against a stout Cleveland defense. So for me, this is a situation where the defense can kind of influence the scoring opportunities. And the other great thing about Fairbairn is that Fairbairn and the Houston Texans play against Tennessee in, excuse me, let me double check that. Yep, it's the Texans play against Tennessee in Week 17, and the Tennessee Titans have actually allowed the most field goal attempts in football. So for whatever reason, Tennessee has been allowing multiple field goals every single week. And we look at Fairbairn. Who did he play last week? Tennessee. So they play Tennessee in 2 of the last 3 games of the season. Fairbairn finishes kicker number 1 against the Tennessee Titans last week. And also in Week 17, we could chase that. So we like Fairbairn this week. We like him next week as well. He's available in so many leagues because he missed a lot of the time this season. Then looking further down the list, another Thursday player you can chase is Blake Grupe of the New Orleans Saints. He's available in 93% of Yahoo leagues. The Rams have allowed the 5th most field goals in the league. Grupe's been reliable all season long. He's hit a 50-yarder last week against the Giants, and he's been very consistent from deep all season long. He has 13 made field goals from 40-plus yards. So if your league has bonuses for, 40-plus, 50-plus yard field goals, like a lot of leagues do, Grupe's definitely one that could get you a couple extra points there. And then the last kicker that I like this week is Will Lutz. And Will Lutz was a guy who had, was probably in your lineup at some point when he was a New Orleans Saint, always kind of up there in the kicker rankings. He's had a quiet few weeks here for Denver. And Denver is coming off of a disappointing blowout loss in Detroit last Saturday. They're now returning to Mile High Stadium, looking to get back on track against a New England team that they should be able to handle. The Denver Broncos are a touchdown favorite, about a touchdown favorite, 6.5 some places. But I think this could lead to more field goal opportunities for Lutz. And I hate to use the word due, but Will Lutz is due for a big one. All of these players are available to you in a ton of leagues. If you don't like your kicker option and you think that one of these guys gives you an edge, grab one and stream them. This is about win or go home. We got to get W's this week, and we want to attack it any way we can. If you like videos like this, check out my defensive video I dropped earlier in this week. Check out First Class Fantasy with Billy Muzo and I talking about your start-sit decisions. And look for my sleepers video to drop later this week right here on Player Profiler YouTube. Time to get some wins, time to win some championships, time to win some money, and have a wonderful holiday. And stick with us here.